前面来，就到前面来，不要客气。来，你要唱主角啊，来，干嘛？前面。来。
Good afternoon. Welcome to the International Business Expo, the first one. How do you like it so far? You know, this is the first one, first International Expo, and I know that someone was very worrying and nervous. It's just like when you open a restaurant. You don't know when you first open, who's coming. So I saw in the early morning a few people here and there, but at lunch we ended up with a full room. So Mr. Lee, I don't need to give you another compliment, but I'm telling you this. You said it has taken 22 years, but that's the part of where we're coming today. You know, people said dream big. Everybody can dream big, but being willing to pay a price to get that dream into become reality is very important. I remember you bought in the Southwest, on Bel Air, you were the first one who bought that piece of land. And then you turned that land into a building when everything around that was cornfield with cows. And then you turned that into a printing company, a media company. And because of that, maybe small businesses came. A lot of Vietnamese media came and used the services for a reasonable cost. Yes, I feel very honored in this room. You know, I don't know why you chose me to be a speaker. We got Mr. M.E. Lai, we got Investor, we got Steve Seward, we got Kenneth Lee, all the big people. Why you want Danny to speak?
We all second to you.
No, sir. But I'm very excited to talk about this. But Mr. Lee, this is a great start. And hopefully, in the following months, we have heard a lot of ideas, but the ability to follow up with these ideas. You remember the Port of Houston, John Mosley? He said the port create billions of dollar industries for all. But the key is how can we approach that? That is when you play an important role. You create the workshop between two people. But today, by the way, my name is Danny Nguyen. And our topic today is about commercial real estate investment. And I'm going to share with you 3 parts. why Houston? And the second major part is what type of investment are attractive. Number 3, opportunity and challenges for each. But with that, I don't want to be alone up here, so I want to invite my partner, David Hamilton. He is the trustee, the board trustee of Fort Bend. But more importantly, he's very pro-business. Okay, I know some of you may not like politicians, but we need to like and support good politicians. Is that right, David? You ready?
Ready?
Yes.
Yeah, so first question, Danny. Are we sitting or standing? Yeah, okay, so first question, this will be an obvious question to a lot of people, but maybe not everybody. Yeah, sorry, my name's David Hamilton. I've been over a decade in the oil and gas industry, and then I'm also in my 3rd year on the Fort Bend ISD School Board. So Fort Bend ISD is the 6th largest school district in Texas. We have a $1 billion annual budget. We have 83 campuses and 80,000 students. And then we also just passed a $1.26 billion bond that we're working on to do some construction and renovation projects. So Danny, a question that some people may have is why Houston in the landscape of the international business market? Why would investors be looking at Houston for commercial real estate?
You know, real estate is not about a building, a piece of land, a warehouse, but it's more important than that. So let me give you a bigger picture. The reason that people decided to invest in a certain city, in a certain state, because of certain advantages. So I don't have to tell you about Houston, because you have heard all the great things about Houston. But you know, sometimes we take them for granted. It doesn't mean you live in Houston and you know Houston. I remember I had the honor and privilege to travel to several countries. It's called Outbound Trade Mission under the leadership of one person that I greatly admire. And he used to be the former CEO of the Greater Houston Partnership. With that way, I have an honor to ask you to stand to Jeff Mosley. This is my mentor, my teachers. Yeah, this is the man who saw Houston. You see a lot of companies that came to Houston, not because they just come to Houston. Some leaders, he collaborated, Greater Houston Partnership, collaborated with the mayor, different leaders. Remember we went on a trip with the Texas medical leaders, Houston Airport, the Port of Houston, so we sell Houston. So sometimes it's funny to look back at a Houstonian from overseas, and then they try to sell Houston. So one of the great things about Houston is the capital, the energy industry, right? Okay, so tell us a little bit why energy plays such an important role in Houston.
Yeah, so Houston is the oil and gas capital of the world. Some of you may know that, but as I work in it every day, you see it. So I've worked in the downstream and the upstream end of the oil and gas industry. And so on the upstream side, the drilling companies, a lot of people think of West Texas, but in a previous job, I was selling to those drilling companies, and guess where their headquarters are all located? Right here in Houston. And so whether it's upstream, downstream, midstream, Houston is the place to be for oil and gas. And if you're in that industry, you know where Houston stands within the oil and gas industry, but you may not know where we stand in the healthcare industry. We're also, I would say, the healthcare capital of the world.
Talk about healthcare, bio, Texas Medical Center. What other industry? Just name a few key industry and businesses that contribute to the significant growth of this city.
Yeah, so Danny just made this point earlier. So you go back maybe 30 or 40 years ago, and Houston was really relying on one industry. And so when the oil and gas industry was down, the whole city was down. And so since then we've diversified. So Danny mentioned healthcare, bio. You can go on agriculture.
You know, Houston is the hub of food processing center in the whole country, and entertainment, tourism, the Port of Houston.
Airspace. Johnson
Center, Johnson Space Center. You know that why? First thing they talk about is why should they come to the city? For somebody to come to the city to live, there must be some requiring qualities. It's going to be a safe place to live, right?
Absolutely.
It's a good place to work, to play, to shop, and to connect.
Absolutely.
And I'm about to introduce a mayor that knows this one better than anybody. We're about to do that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that, so in order to attract these people to come to the city, we have to look at those industries because they are the backbone of the economy. If these industries collapse, if these businesses are not doing well, then nothing matters. So that's what real estate is about. Real estate is not about a piece of land. That piece of land must be in use for some purpose, right? And sometimes people talk about location. In order to find to invest, you have to find a location. But you know, it's not about the physical aspect only, but you have to involve the financial aspect of it, the social, the politics of it. And one of the things that I would like to talk about is the public-private partnership. Let's talk about land today. Let's focus on land today. Land is what attracts a lot of companies come to Houston. But let's redefine the definition of Houston, okay? Houston is not only Houston defined a political purpose, but Houston, in the greater Houston region, included Pearland, Sugar Land, Richmond, Rosenberg. It comprises about 9 counties, right? Right, Mr. Mosley? So when we talk about Houston and investment, it's a greater Houston. So with that, may I have an honor to introduce, he's not a politician. I used to hate politicians. You know, I came to Houston in 1984 with my father as a political refugee from Vietnam, okay? And that we have an opportunity to attend the Texas A&M, study international business, and I attended MBA program, but I'm proud to say that I'm a dropout MBA. During my last year MBA, my last semester, sitting in the classroom, but I'm thinking about making real estate, commercial real estate, because we have a growth, the growth of the communities. Look at the Asian, all my neighbors, all my communities, everybody want to look for a space to open business. So I cannot wait, so I dropped out. That's why I became a commercial real estate agent, and became a broker, and become an investor. And I had the privilege to become a city council member for Missouri City.
Politician.
That's a good one, those. The one that focused on economic. The one that tried to bring a lot of companies into the city. Because a good politician helped to create jobs. So with that, Mayor, I have an honor to invite Mayor, the Honorable Mayor of Pearland, to the council.
Thank you.
Say it. Thank you for coming, Mayor.
Absolutely, and Danny, thank you for the invite. I know you've given me about 15 minutes. I could go for 15 hours, but I won't. I promise you. And the other bad thing that you do is you give a politician a microphone and you never get it back. But no, with that, Danny, I want to talk a little bit about public-private partnerships, but I want to take one step back and talk a little bit about why Houston.
Yes.
And when I say why Houston, I'm talking global Houston, the Houston metro area. And, Jeff Mosley being here, who I will say, outstanding job at the Greater Houston Partnership, because he understood the global aspect and the regional aspect that is Houston. Not just the confines of the city of Houston, but the greater region. And the reason real estate, the reason the market, and the reason that things are so good in the Houston area starts with a state of Texas that wants and is attracting the right types of business. People are moving into the state. Net migration is about 12 to 1,300 a day. Just do the math. And it's a huge number. So those folks moving in have to live somewhere. They have to work somewhere. And so the jobs that are coming in are attracting the people from all over the country, all over the world to locate here. And so it's incumbent upon us as cities, it's incumbent upon working with our school districts. I'm so glad to have a school district present today, as well as the community, the development community, to then create space. In Pearland, we believe in public-private partnerships. It shouldn't be the public, the taxpayer, doing everything. We have to attract business development. We want to attract commercial development. And I've got some examples of some that we can talk about, or we can talk holistically about it today. But right now, I'll give you an example. Right now, in our what we call Lower Kirby area, so 288, Beltway 8, all the way over to towards 521, it's roughly 1,000 acres in there. And in that immediate area, between active development, planning, and otherwise, we have 3 million square feet of development in some phase. And that's all in a very small area of our community. And it's there because of location. It's there because of opportunity. You hit on the word, opportunity. You're in the real estate business because of the opportunity. And I'm in the real estate business as well. I'm in the residential development arena, not the commercial, but the residential. And it's opportunity. Not every piece of land has the opportunity today. It will someday, and we have to put it in a position. But as a mayor, I want to make sure that you, as a real estate development, or the company that's coming in to locate your business, gets their cash register open as fast as possible. Okay? And that cash register may be a manufacturing business, but you know what I mean. We want their products to get in, manufactured, and back out the door, so they're making money. And so I will tell you, the last 4 years as mayor, the mindset at City Hall is, how do we turn a no to a yes? How do we look at your plans and work you through a system and say, if you'll just simply do this, that no becomes a yes. And so many governments around the Houston area, around the state, and around our country, when you walk in with a permit and something's wrong, it's just an immediate no. They're not going to tell you how, they're not going to tell you when, and the city of Pearland is not going to design your project. It's not what I'm looking for either. But sometimes it's the mindset of staff should always be, how are we to help, not how are we to say no. And that is a huge mindset change that most governments don't understand, right? They just have a black and white set of plans that either meets it or doesn't, and you move on. And instead, I'd rather staff work creatively. How do we make something become a yes that's a no? We've got an active development right now. It's about 35 acres right there on 35. We have a strategy to redevelop our main street, or 35, to make sure that we have good cash flow and businesses come in. We're talking about primary jobs. And this is one where our Economic Development Corporation, PEDC, stepped up with about $3.5 million in infrastructure, public infrastructure, to help them. At the end of the day, they're going to have 200,000 or 300,000 square feet of manufacturing, type places there, at some $34 or $35 million of capital investment. But just as importantly, should be about 165 to 200 jobs located in that particular area. Those are jobs that my residents can have. They can live closer to where they live, as opposed to moving into Houston, as an example.
Yeah, let's talk about what attract business come to the city. Earlier, I mentioned the components, what make people come to the city to live. But for a big company, whether it's a big hospital or manufacturing, the 4 factors must be met. Number 1, land availability. Number 2, capital. Number 3, human resources. Right. And number 4, technology. Right. And let's talk about land today. As a city had existed for several years, and you have a comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan is a plan that the leader of the city look into the future, 10, 20, 30 years to plan it. That's why they have zoning. They have certain zoning, this zoning, and that zoning. But man, the city have changed. That would be crazy to follow the vision of 50 years ago. as a mayor, what can you do? Whether to change the zoning or whatever to accommodate the new need, the social justice.
So it's important that every city takes their comprehensive plan and updates it periodically. We just completed an update to our comprehensive plan. In fact, I think we had the second reading of that ordinance change about a month ago. And so it's real important that I'm a market-based approach to zoning. Yes, you have things on a page, and yes, you want certain things in your community. And just as importantly, there's things that you don't want in your community. And that's for the community to decide. But at the end of the day, it needs to be a market-based approach. We, as a governmental entity, can sit and look at a tract of land and say, we want it to be X. But if the marketplace doesn't attract and locate there, it's wrong. And one thing I will say, and this should be music to everyone's ears, the market is always right. Always. We did a rezoning of a tract of land off of 35 about 4 years ago that has been zoned industrial forever. No hits on it. The family couldn't give the land away. And instead, we did rezone it into a neighborhood, residential zoning, and it is changing the face of that particular area because the marketplace is speaking to what it needs to be. So I think it's important upon our leaders, our community development folks, our city managers and the like, to take ownership that sometimes we need to go and look at what the market is trying to tell us, and then you change your comprehensive plan and you change your zoning based on that.
Yes, I love it. This is called proactive leadership. You know, Stephen Covey, have you guys read a book called 7 Habits of Successful People? They think with the end in mind. You know, the old traditional way is a group of old folks, mayor and council come together. Then they decided, this is for industrial, this is for the retail, this is for housing, crazy. But the fact that you said you listen to the people, you listen to the market dictates what a city should do. Only I couldn't be prouder, Mayor. They interviewed you. You said one of the things that you like to do is to make it easier for a business community to come in the city because they help to grow the city. Would you please elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so show of hands, how many of you have put in a permit at City X? It just doesn't matter which city it is. You put in a permit and you get red lines and you're like, okay, I have some questions. So you reach out to engineering or you reach out to permitting, reach out to somebody, and about a week or two later, you still haven't heard back from them. Or you call and they go, well, it's the wrong area that you're calling. You really need to get in touch with so-and-so. And then that leads to so-and-so, and that leads to so-and-so, and you didn't get your questions asked and answered. Okay, so we've all been there, right? You can tell. I'm in the development business, you can tell. So one of the things that we've done goes back to a proactive approach. I want your cash registers open as soon as possible, so that means I need to make the development process smoother. Notice nowhere in the conversation, I said it over here, nowhere did I say go lax on the rules. We have strong rules. We have stringent rules. We have an attractive city. We want an attractive city. But what we also have done is we've created a new position within our cities, a development coordinator. So now, as a developer, you have a point of contact. That point of contact ushers you through the system. So if you have a question, instead of tracking down the person, you go to your point of contact. It is their job to track down what's necessary, get it back to you, and move it along. That's customer service. At the end of the day, community development and permitting, who is their customer? Development community, right? And so part of that, they need to have a customer-centric focus, just like we have a centric focus on our citizens. We need to have a centric focus on the developers who are putting capital, millions and millions and millions of dollars in play in our community. We want that. So why not make it easier for them to make that happen?
You talk about giving good quality service, Mayor. So that is for private industry. But you know, a lot of politicians, when they run, they say, vote for me because I'm a humble servant, I'm approachable and all that. But in reality, it's funny. When we come to the city, these are the people who create the city, a vacant piece of land with nothing on it. Because of the vision of these people. They are brave. They take the risk. They put together, they apply for a bank, they go through construction, and by the time they get that plan, they go to the city. And the city, from the staff, they don't treat people with respect from the planning, the zoning department. What is it that as a leader you do differently, Mayor?
Well, it's a matter of expectation, right? As the mayor of our city and as our council, we have an expectation level of customer service, of excellence in customer service all the way to the top. It starts with me. If somebody emails me, I'm going to do my dead level best to have a return back to that as soon as I possibly can. Hopefully, if it's one of my citizens and I know it's a citizen, I will tell you, I've answered emails, within minutes of them emailing. Why? I have it on my phone. If it's not a citizen, I might be in a meeting, I'll look at it when I get done. But it sets the expectation level that if I'm doing that as the mayor, the expectation levels, everyone in the organization should have that same mindset. And now, because we truly have people all the way down through the organization that want that, they want to do that. And when we find the person who doesn't, that we can move them along the way. And that's okay. Not the position isn't always for everyone that's out there. And so we want to make sure that we do it the right way, but at the same time, it's a responsiveness. I feel like that is a responsibility that we owe. And again, I go back to people willing to put millions of dollars at risk in our community. Why aren't we listening to them? And I know what you're talking about. Government bureaucrats and they can. The reason they do what they do is because they can. That doesn't mean it's right. Okay? And so it's incumbent upon us to work through that. And sometimes we get misunderstandings of rules, we get misunderstandings of how certain things need to be applied. And that's where it's important. I've always, when I was on council prior to being mayor, big believer in let's take 15 minutes and get together and let's talk about this. Because, and I'll use this as an example. I hold this up between me and you, Danny. What are we looking at? We're looking at the same thing, just a different perspective. Doesn't make it wrong, just makes it a different look, right? So instead, when we get together and we throw that aside and we talk, what happens? We get on the same page. And so I'm a big believer and encourager that, hey, take 15 minutes, get on the same page, and let's advance this.
You and I have known each other for a long time. As a matter of fact, we own a shopping center in Pearland. And when I walk into the city hall, I'm not trying to put out my frustration on you today, yeah, please. But I try to speak for the voice who cannot speak for themselves. Sure. As a developer, it costs money. The construction, they pay a lot of money, and every time that they need some issue with the city, it takes 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. Every day passes by, they pay mortgage, they pay interest. The people are waiting. So, as a new leader, man, please hear me out. So, what have you done to streamline that process? Because time is money. They cannot just sit forever and call and beg and can you please? How can you solve that problem?
So it goes to metrics and it goes to expectations. So we have time limits, imposed time limits on when a permit is submitted. First review is 15 working days. So 15 working days back to, so that could, think about that, that's working days, it's Monday through Friday, so that's 3 weeks. And then second review is 10 days. Okay, and let me, so we have thousands of permits that come through, not just a single house permit, but it could be any number of things. 85 to 90% of our permits are issued in the first pass. And here's what the first pass is. First pass is you submit the permit, you get the red lines back. It might be 1 or 2 or 10, whatever, 1 or 2. You address those, you submit it back, and your permit is issued. Almost 90% of our permits are issued in that process. Very few come, so I go back to, if there's something small and you're not understanding what the comment is, that's where the development coordinator comes in and it streamlines that process. I had a city council member in Houston ask me about...
I think that deserves a round of applause, guys. We've been criticized for when you do good things, you need to be applauded.
Well, and I will say, you know, the reputation in Pearland for years was it's very difficult to do business in. And again, it goes back to, you don't change that reputation overnight. You don't walk, I mean, and I can work for 10 years changing that reputation, making it what it is. And today, something go wrong, and everybody in their mindset goes back 10 years. And so that is an uphill battle, but it's a battle worth fighting. It's a battle worth making sure that we do it the right way. And I will tell you, we have developers that come in and they're not the best of intentions, right? I mean, it happens. And us as a development community have to be willing to step up, even with our own brothers in the development industry, and say, you're not doing this right. And so that's self-governance. And it's important that we do that. I've got a project in a neighboring city, I won't name the city right now, that I'm 2 years behind schedule. I know. So I know what you're talking, I know it's a private project, and I know what you're talking about. And I always tell people, and I tell people at City Hall, I said, have you ever played the game Pac-Man? And you hear that thing, bop, 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 just going like that? Imagine hearing that in your ears, and that is interest. That is interest at the bank every single day, and you don't hear it. You go to bed. What is Pac-Man doing? And I said, you've never put capital at risk. Put capital at risk and understand Pac-Man, and your mindset will change.
I'm so glad to hear that. You know, we came from a country, most of us, we look at government as a threat. Sure. Government told us what to do, tell us what to do. And we are so fortunate we came to America because you call yourself public servant. But sometimes it doesn't seem to work that way. And I think part of that because you understand the mentality of the people. You're a business owner too. So I hope with that, Mayor, because if we succeed, look at, we have a lot of business owners, developer, investor. I'm telling you, I should not be speaking. Mr. Andy Lai should be speaking. Mr. Steve, some other people should be speaking. But can you imagine, David, a piece of land with nothing on it, and that they turn that into a building, and now the building is worth several $1 million, and the city benefit from the tax revenues. So the city will say, thank you, Mr. Andy, thank you, Mr. Lee, for building it. What can I do to help you? And not only that, when the building come up, and you get the tenants, we provide services and sales to the local people. We create jobs. We change dynamic, the whole city. We create that city. So with that, we don't have much time, but I'd like to open the floor for your questions and comments. Whatever question you have for the mayor. Do you have anything to add, David, before we open the floor?
You mentioned coming from another country, so I want to give you an opportunity. I know some people know the story of you coming here you mentioned the refugee camp, but Danny, can you mention that story for those who don't know your personal story of coming to Houston? And I think it's helpful for people who were born here who don't always appreciate America. Your story always makes me appreciate being an American even more. And then also just the economic opportunity. It just reiterates that coming here with nothing like your family did. I don't know if you want to share that story or if you want to jump to questions from the audience.
I think we don't have much time, but we're sitting in the audience who have similar story. Their story may be more inspirational, but I'm telling you one thing. We have paid a dear price for success. So taking risk is nothing. Losing a piece of land, losing whatever, but that's nothing. Because we risk our life. That's why you see a lot of immigrant community. They are so courageous. Right. Earlier, the SBA said we have only 8% Asian population, but we got 25% of SBA loan. What did it say? A lot of immigrants willing to take a risk, and this city is known for international and entrepreneurial spirit. With that, Mr. Lee, I think you raised your hand. What is?
Such a beautiful city. One of my friends they go over to Chinatown at the pier. You're right. I think let's see what kind of project city can initiate, so we can bring in some investors. Right.
Why don't you create that platform? That platform, the studio, the Chamber of Commerce, and invite the mayor. Maybe we do some workshop. How to do business with Pearland, from the least of Pearland.
Along the same. I'm sorry, because I'm ahead of you and I'm older than you. But anyway, not necessarily smarter. I'm a respected follower of Danny, his entrepreneurship and his leadership particularly. And he's a good politician, I have to say, and I want you to go back. But anyway, the Pearland in the past, I wouldn't call them notorious, but it's bad as some other cities at the skirt of Houston. They make the zoning so difficult, make it on it, and you not realize as a developer, investor, we really taking a high risk. And we realize this is the land of opportunity, and this is really a lot of opportunity for us to capitalize on that. And right now, we look at the new mayor, and we realize the Pearland is changing and is streamlining the operation. That's why we look at one particular track line. And I'd like to introduce Professor Wong. She is thinking about returning some kind of a clean energy, the solar energy related equipment into the Pearland. And Dr. Wong, you want to elaborate a little bit?
Thank you, Mr. Lai, and thank you, Mayor, for your wonderful introduction. And I'm a professor at UH, and I also have a family business of transformers and switchboard. So right now we are in the process of deciding which part of Houston we are going to open up our shop, our facility here, because we want to help the locals with disaster relief. Because I'm a Houston local, and we've been suffering from the hurricanes year after year. And we also want to bring the revenue, bring the tax dollars, also help with the local community. So I want to ask the mayor about how would you say, what is the advantage of Pearland compared to other part of Houston? And yes, please.
Yeah, and I'll address your specific issue.
If I may, before you do that, because we have compared some other sites in Missouri City, in Stafford, and also in the most part of the airport. But when you look at the Pearland along Highway 35, we see a lot of good potential, but we'd like you to elaborate. Treat us as a customer, tell us your service.
Yeah, and a couple of things. I also want to address, I know the site that you're looking for, that I believe Danny owns on Cullen is a great site. We recently rezoned that site, I think at Danny's request, away from a mixed-use zoning up and down Cullen. Got to realize, as our city grew, we annexed areas where there was a lot of business and residential that were mixed together. And so early zoning in some of those areas as we moved west, we had to take into consideration people who coexisted before. They needed to coexist after. So Cullen became a Cullen mixed-use area, and then over time, the housing has moved out, and now we have others. So we rezoned that tract of land general business, and right now, I think it's a matter of definition, if that makes sense. It's a matter of definition on the business that you're trying to bring in there. We need to look at the definition of that in a manufacturing, and can it really fit and coexist in a general business category without having to change it to like an M1 industrial, certainly an M2 industrial, heavy industrial. I don't think it fits that, so it's a matter of definition. Now here's the thing, the attorneys, in order to change that, we got to go through a process of changing the definition. So it's a matter of process and selling that to council, if you will, to move that forward. But I think to answer your question specifically, why us? I think we're willing to listen, we're willing to engage, and not just me, but our staff is willing to engage and understand your business, not what's written on paper for an application, but understand the business enough to then say, okay, it fits here, here's what we can do, and maybe it doesn't require zone change, okay? So the difference that I see now is we have a city that's willing to sit down, take a few minutes, understand the problem. They understand the code. I've done this as a developer for years, where I have a problem, they know my code, I sit down, it doesn't matter if it's City of Pearland or any other city. You know your code, here's my problem, how do I meet it? And just, most people want to be a part of the solution, but they're never asked. So instead, ask to be a part of the solution. Most government workers want to be a part of the solution. Unfortunately, the bureaucracy is set up to say no. So I think the difference for Pearland is we're willing to listen to the issue and then guide and direct. And I'll say this, sometimes, ultimately, no is an answer. And I hate to say that, but sometimes that is the answer. But it has to be the last answer. It can't be the first answer. It needs to be through a process of how do we welcome the investment into our community.
Sure, we appreciate that.
Steve, CPA.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the pro-business and pro-development. But I have a land in Elvin, right? The Highway 99 has changed of dynamic. Katy, you got a new Chinatown. So Bella and Mr. Whaley is talking about another Chinatown. But my kind of like a question is, you have any insight or update on the last segment of the Grand Parkway all the way to the Elvin?
Yeah, so, and I have another hat I'll put on. I'm second vice chair of the Transportation Policy Council at HTAC, which where all the federal funds come through. So I'm in leadership in that group. I'm also on the HTAC board. But specifically Grand Parkway, so we have segment B, and that goes from 45 through Alvin over to 288. And then you have C that goes from 288 that connects over to 5969 in Fort Bend County. Segment B, they have cut into two pieces. So there's B1, which is 45 through Alvin to FM 2403, which is just south of the college on 35. And then there's B2 that will go from there south and over to 288, okay? So both counties have given up primacy. TxDOT has taken that back over. That segment from 45 to 2403 through Alvin is in design phase as we speak. It's funded and in design. Timing, you're gonna give me line. Okay. I want to say construction starts in 27, complete in 30-31. So that gives you, a time frame. The next section is not funded yet. I think they're waiting to get a little bit further down on this design and then try to understand what the revenue model is going to look like on the next piece. C, going over into Fort Bend County, still isn't on the radar on how, when, and where it's going to be developed. That piece, very challenged. It's almost all floodplain. It's going to be very, very challenging to build. So I hope that answers your question.
Any more questions?
Okay. I was just going to have one question. Are there any new initiatives to attract small business and job growth in Pearland?
Yeah, so everything that we have is at the disposal of either small business or large business. It really comes down to the deal and what it looks like and what's the capital investment involved. There's a lot of deals that come down that it doesn't take much to get through. So we look at each and every single one of them on a standalone basis. I will say, I mentioned this to Danny a little bit ago, through our Economic Development Corporation and our Chamber of Commerce, we have an innovation hub, and that is designed specifically for smaller business, not necessarily startups, but a small business. And so...
Would you define small business? A lot of people miss the C.
Well, yeah. Well, and so I think the technical definition through the federal government is 500 employees or less. I define it as 50 employees or less, really small business. And so...
Small doesn't mean small, okay?
Correct.
We hit at 25.
Right, 25, 50.
And how about revenues? $25 million?
Oh, it has nothing to do with revenue. It has to do with the number of employees. Right. And so that innovation hub, a lot of people have great ideas. They know what they're doing in the business itself, but they don't know how to create the business. They don't know how to grow the business. They don't know how to do those things. And so they're real good at working in the business, but they're not good at working on their business. Big difference there. And the day people learn to deal on their business versus working in their business will explode. So the Innovation Hub is designed to point people in the right direction. Entrepreneurial spirit, where do we go to access capital? Where do we go on rules and regulations? Where do we go, even if it's a simple startup? How do I put a business plan and an LLC together? Those types of things. And so that is actually funded through the Economic Development Corporation, through our Chamber of Commerce. So the Pearland Chamber has the Innovation Hub. They actually house in an office off of 288, and they're open for business, and that's what they want to do. I have a dream, because we have U of H Clear Lake Pearland campus right there on Pearland Parkway, right up close to the Beltway. And one of their buildings, third floor, is completely empty. It's a shell. And I have the dream of creating not just the Innovation Hub, but an incubator system where entrepreneurship can go and thrive and business startups can be created. Behind the university over there, the city owns all that land. The city has 70 acres of land there. Can you imagine 70 acres turned into a business park where the ideas were born right there at the university, created, and that business is thriving in a business park behind it? That's my ultimate dream for that.
Keep that dream alive, okay? Keep that dream alive.
Absolutely.
Because your dream benefit all of us. So we will make sure that we support your dream to become a reality.
I was in the third floor not too long ago, and again, it's just a shell. And I look at it, and the vice president of the campus says, "Do you see it?"
The Honorable Jazz Mosley.
Mayor, thank you for your vision of changing the culture at City Hall and making it pro-business. Very, very inspirational. Public debt has become kind of a bad word. And it's not bad if it's managed.
Correct.
And all of us in our homes, we privately use debt. Thank goodness we live in a country where we can borrow, because we can look at societies where there's no debt. It's all cash and carry. It's so much harder for an entrepreneur or a business or a family if they don't have the ability to borrow. And so for a government to be able to borrow, you get to issue bonds. And when you're stretching and growing as dramatically as Pearland is, or as the school district is, you must look at debt and how to manage that debt. My question is related to the issuance of bonds. Typically, a note on a bond could be 20, 25, maybe 30 years out. And then when that bill is paid, what we're not seeing as taxpayers is a rollback of the ad valorem rate to pay the debt. And so I guess not so much a commitment that you could make, but it'd be nice, it seems like, when you go to the voters to ask them to consider a bond issuance, if there could be a pledge that once that bond is retired, that the ad valorem rate would be rolled back.
Yeah, the hard part, I think it's, yeah, I think
He's the biggest, he's
Yeah.
the biggest.
I think it's
forever.
So it's a great question and a great concept. Let me speak to that. If you're a city that's no longer growing and adding projects, I could see something like that happening. But like in our particular case, we have a certain amount of debt that gets paid off every single year, but we have debt coming on as well. So we're replacing debt that's coming off with debt that's coming on. So we're not raising taxes. In fact, in the last 4 years as being mayor, our tax rate's down 10 cents. Now, values are up, they are. But we are also, we're trying to do as fiscally responsible as we can, still playing catch up on infrastructure, from a hyper growth city, because you never can do it ahead of time. It's always going to be after. But you said something, and I want to talk about that. Debt is a tool. It's a financial tool, okay? And we're talking about economic development, so whether it's TERS, a 380, a 381, all the different tools that are out there, they're tools. A toll road is a tool, okay? And so, now, if I need a screwdriver to fix my problem or to address my problem, I don't get the hammer out. I don't get the wrench out. I use a screwdriver. And so, when we talk about debt, when we talk about financial tools, we use the tool that's necessary to get the job done with the end taxpayer in mind and understanding and managing through that. Sometimes we may delay a project simply because of debt load and the effect it has. We have forecasting tools in our city for every scenario that's out there. So when we look at debt, when we look at a bond program, when we look at various things, we put factors in play and we actually look at what that financial model looks like. So it would be hard for, you could easily vote that in, and you're obligating a city 30 years from now to roll something back when we have no idea what that's going to look like.
Mayor, whether you must be a good speaker or your topic is so interesting, everyone is paying attention. But on the TV show, people say, we will go back after a commercial break. But we don't have a commercial break. Can I promise our audience this, Mayor? This is not the last time that they will be talking with you. You will be back. And Mr. Lee, we will create a platform for you so you can come back and talk to people. With that, will you please give a big round of applause for the mayor? Thank you. Should we take a break or should we continue on? Okay. Okay. Yeah, yes. Okay, yes. Ambassador, would you have a seat, please? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the next interesting section? Ladies and gentlemen, the city is known for one of the best infrastructure. And talk about infrastructure, you cannot ignore the Port of Houston. And you know the relation between the Port of Houston and the Port of Panama. It's like a game changer. Very quickly, traditionally, in order to bring cargo and commodities to the United States, they go to the Port of Long Beach or New York. But with the expansion of Panama Canal, it will change everything. With that, I would like to have an honor to introduce the former ambassador from Panama. Yeah.
I have a presentation, but it's really in real estate, but I will address the Panama Canal and the Port of Houston. The Port of Houston is the #1 port in the United States in tonnage. In the year 2000, zero, right, trade of containers from Asia would come to Houston. They would come to Beach, Seattle, go to the canal in New York, New Jersey, Norfolk, Savannah. In 2016, the Panama Canal doubled its capacity, built a new set of locks that allow large container ships to go through. Just to give you an example, before 2016, the largest container ship could only carry 3,500 TEUs. Now, there have been ships of 15,000. And the Port of Houston today, compared to zero in the year 2000, 22% of its freight comes from Asia. As you said, a game changer. And Danny was there in the trade mission when this was just about to finish. So we're talking a dramatic change in 8 years. And today, that new locks that were built at a $5.6 billion is 87% capacity. So Panama, that thought that by 2040, they would have to expand again. Now we're talking 2030, 2035, but the biggest beneficiary has been the Port of Houston. And that trade also creates business, it creates income, creates jobs. This relationship, between Texas and Panama started in 1848. And that was when the canal that did not exist, but we had a land canal. Panama is 55 miles, so people would come to the Pacific or the Atlantic and 8 days by mules. So Panama built what it was then the first interoceanic railroad. At the same time that Houston had its first train come to Houston. It connected to New Orleans, there was a route to New Orleans, and it started the commerce between Texas and Panama. And today, the #1 trade and investment partner of Panama is Texas. And the #1 city is Houston. Mr. Mosley, great friend, was also heavily involved because he led the trade mission to Panama then. I remember when I went to his office at the Greater Houston Partnership, he took me to his office and he had a big map and had a red circle, and it was Panama. In his world map, the country and city that was singled out was Panama. He was way ahead of everybody else. So I'm going to talk about something that very few people know. Yes, sir. Do we have the presentation? Jennifer, I sent it to Jennifer. Yes?
Did you send it to Jennifer?
I sent it, but I have a...
What did it come down to?
I have a UPS.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, very few people, thank you, very few people talk about the international real estate market. They don't realize that there are close to 1 million Americans, expatriates, living in other countries. And that's why the United States has a tremendous impact in the culture, in the daily life of many countries because of the numbers of expatriates that live there. Panama has become a haven, and I'm going to go quickly. Okay. Let's talk about the retirees market. What's happening is that the United States in some cities is becoming a very expensive place to live. The income is not kept with inflation. So many people are having problems making ends meet. So they're looking for places where they can move and keep their standard of living as possible, but at a lower cost. And that has created a very large retirees market. In the Americas, by far, Mexico is the number one. It's a large country, has many opportunities, has borders with 4 states. It's easy to access even by car. Cost of living is very controllable. So Mexico traditionally has been the number one potential market for retirees. Now the countries in the Americas that are attracting many Americans, Guatemala is one of them, Ecuador, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, and Panama. So the inclination is, let's go to other country, not only for cost of living. Today, it's easy to travel. It's easy to assess countries, their benefits, and their attractiveness. So today, you see more and more Americans looking not only for retirees, some just do it for a second home because they want to travel once in a while, live in other countries and other cultures. So the mobility that it has, the countries offer, is a very important factor in looking for different countries to live. Healthcare facilities are very important, especially for seniors, because they want to make sure that wherever they go, they have the assets that they can access healthcare at a reasonable cost. And the insurance companies are cooperating tremendously because in some countries now they already have places or connections that they offer those facilities. So, what has changed? First of all, the millennials, they look for more adventure. They are more prone to travel and to try new ways. In the United States today, about 44% consider they have low wages. That's becoming, with the inflation of 20-25% in the last 4 years, that has become a major factor in attracting retirees to other countries, the cost of living, the cost of the social security. Social security, some people, and I think they're wrong probably, but some people with all these politics, everybody's saying, well, he's going to finish the social security. I mean, this is a problem with people. If I don't have my social security, I'm not going to be able to live in a country that today has a high cost of living. So those are factors that are moving the market forward for retirees. And here are the reasons for retiring abroad: insufficient savings to retire, reduction of our 401k, the low wages, when the manufacturing jobs are less today, the increased cost of living. So all of these are factors that are moving people to other countries. Now, when you decide or you are close to making a decision, these are the factors that people are influenced by. Cost of living, the weather, very important. That's why you see a lot of people from the northern part of the country retiring overseas. Security, the tax benefits, it has to be an attractive location, good healthcare facilities, they feel welcome, nice people, large expat community, because it makes it easier to go to a country and feel welcome and have a relationship. Some people are attracted by the culture and history of the country. A lot of the people who go to Europe to retire are looking for good food and wine. And then you have easy to get resident status and the connectivity with the United States. For instance, Panama has the national airline of Panama, Copa Airlines, connects directly to 17 cities in the United States. Boston, New York, Raleigh, Washington, D.C., Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, Orlando, Atlanta, Houston, 3 flights a day, Austin, Los Angeles, Denver, San Francisco, Las Vegas, Chicago, flights to Canada, Toronto, and Montreal. That's a very important factor because it makes it easy to travel, especially if they have an emergency in the United States. Family emergency is important that they have a direct connection. There are several publications that measure the factors that attract somebody to move. For instance, the International Living gives you here, and I selected 5 countries: Ecuador, Portugal, Mexico, Costa Rica, and Panama. And they take the main factors and publish them, so anybody interested in moving overseas can look at these grades and understand what the countries offer. These are some of the things that you read of companies, developers promoting overseas homes. This is the case of Panama. In the case of Panama, you see that there are 4 or 5 areas of the country that expats, retirees usually move to. And they're looking for different things. If you like urban living, dynamic, high stress, because cities do have a lot of stress, Panama City is a great place. But some others look for beach. There are 13 beaches 90 miles from Panama City. A lot of people are moving there. If you like highlands, there are highlands in Boquete, the western province. That's the highlands. I don't know if they have the best coffee in the world, but they have the most expensive coffee in the world that is, winning all of these bids, the international bids. So it's important that there is something for everybody when choosing a country to retire. You can't see this, but I have done 7 trade missions for retirees in Panama. I'm doing it in January, our 8th trade mission, and what we do is we take 4 days, we visit properties, we introduce them to developers, we give forums of what they need to do at Panama. We take them around in tours so they see Panama, understand Panama, even to the beaches, and we have optional programs to the highlands far from Panama. So these are some of the places that we're going to visit. If you go to Panama, how many of you have been to Panama? Well, if you go to Panama, you have to go to the canal. I mean, it's an engineered marvel of the world. So we usually take 1 day of tourism. We call it tourism, but it's more an introduction to the country, and the canal is always part of that. You see there the Panama Vieja, the old city. The old city is 525 years old, or 515 years old. Is the first city of the Spaniards that was established in the Pacific side of the country. Okay, so these trade missions allow, and we take realtors mostly, to see the projects, have training on how to sell in Panama, meet developers, and also meet other realtors, but locals, so they can do referrals. We have taken more than 500 in the 7 programs, more than 500 realtors, and most of them repeat because they were successful initially in establishing their relationship with the developers and doing business. I used to live in DC. The ones I think back in the year 2008 and 7 were mostly oriented to the East Coast. I live in Houston now. I've been living in Houston for 17 years. And most of the ones that went last year were from Texas. San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, and other areas around. But there is a tremendous interest in Texas with Panama because what I mentioned, Panama and Texas have a strategic relationship, not only with the Port of Houston, but also with the airport. The airport, here's where in the Houston starts what we call in Panama the hub of the Americas, because they connect with Copa to more than 50 destinations in South America. Chevron, which is now a Houston company, is the #1 exporter from Panama, from Texas to Panama. And then you have companies like Halliburton. Now, Halliburton is an oil services company. It has its Latin American headquarters in Panama. Panama has no oil and it has no gas. So you ask, why is Halliburton in Panama, having in the city of Panama its headquarters for the Americas? And the reason is the connectivity of Panama. Halliburton people can go to every capital in the Americas and return the next day if necessary. That's something that no other city offers. So right now Panama has 196 multinational companies that have Panama as its headquarters for the Americas. So it's real estate, transportation, logistics, This and tourism, these are the markets, the sectors that are really attracting, and there's a lot of Texas companies and Houston companies now doing business in Panama. One of the things that we do in these trade missions, I always ask everybody, who has been in Panama? And usually about half say yes, other half say no. And then I ask them, to those who, this is the first trip, what was your first impression? And inevitably, people say, I was impressed by the skyline of Panama. It looks like Miami. And I will always say, there's a fundamental difference between Miami and Panama. In Panama, we speak English. So, and that's why Americans feel very welcome in Panama, because of the language, the history. It's the country in the Americas that is closest to Panama, and we intend to keep it. So, thank you very much. And
we've got about a few minutes. Do you have any questions for the ambassador about Panama? Let me tell you this, it's not about all the beautiful things, but the people are super nice. And it's only about 1 hour and a half, 2 hours.
The country is 4.5.
Yes.
The city of Panama, 1.3 million.
Yes. It's beautiful. It's just right there. I hope you have it.
That's why our trade mission is called Panama Beautiful.
When the trade meeting going to be? When?
It's the 3rd week of January. I have some brochures if anybody wants. I'm going to give it to you.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Lee, one of your missions is create trade mission. Why don't we collaborate with
ITC could work with you, create this trade mission. Very important, yeah, ambassador. Okay, we will do that.
I've been doing that for forever. So.
I know. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, thank you. We appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much. Well, thank you. Yes. Hope you come to our gala tonight.
I'll see you at the gala.
Thank you so much for staying. I really appreciate your support. And next will be the last section. And I hope you will stay to hear this interesting presentation, which will be conducted by Dr. Pravin Bagapur on a very interesting topic. It's called American Canadian School of Medicine. Let's give people a second opportunity to become a doctor.
Dr. Pavan is our big supporter in the last many years. You know, his son, they created a school. A lot of people probably cannot get education, medical school in this country, but they make it work. So that's the reason they come in to present their project in the, anybody want to get into the medical school, you need to pay attention. Okay, so Dr. Pavan, welcome.
He asked me to talk about health and education. Yes, I am educator, but I brought with me a certified doctor, board certified interventional radiologist, who completed his fellowship at the most prestigious hospital is Cleveland Clinic. After I finished, my son Harvey going to talk about the health. That it's, I listened to his speech, you know, he does a lot of the speech about health. He's running a nonprofit school, you know, medical school, and I am very proud of him. I really appreciate him. He was in New York, practicing over there, and he flew here to be with me today. Right. I'm just going to briefly talk about the part about education. When we get to the health, I give it to the certified medical doctor. I really like to begin by sharing a personal story that I hope will resonate with you. I came to America as a single mom with 2 young children. He was actually, my son Harvey was 3 years old and the other 1 year and a half. I am very proud of both of them. Both of them are physicians and giving back to the community. Arriving from the Iran part of the United States, it was one of the hardest decisions I ever made. Stepping in a new world full of challenges I couldn't have anticipated. But I knew that to build a better future for my children and myself. And I realized education would be the key to success. So, I set a long-term goal, not only to succeed for myself and my children, but to one day help others achieve their dreams as well. Initially, life was anything but easy. Between raising 2 children, adopting a new culture, and pursuing my education while working, I faced a lot of challenges. Over the years, I earned a master's degree in clinical psychology and a doctorate in educational leadership. These qualifications, combined with my expertise and experience as a counselor, equipped me with valuable insight into overcoming adversity and finding purpose in helping others. But even by this passion, I began my career in community work, starting as a counselor to help others and navigate their struggle they are going through. Later, I transitioned into an administrative role to broaden my impact and lead effort in serving the community. And my children also embrace the value of giving back and helping to the community. Through this experience, I came to understand that achieving educational success also and pursuing our long-term goals require more than just hard work. It demands resilience and commitment to overall well-being. And now we are getting to the health part, actually. I'm just going to ask Dr. Bagger for Arvind to talk about the healthcare system and continue with that. Thank you very much.
Well, hello. Let me see. Hello? Okay, great. My voice is pretty loud as it is normally. But Mom, thank you for taking that risk and challenge of bringing us to America. As you can see it, her dream lived out true. And I am an interventional radiologist. I practice in multiple states. I have a license in probably 10 states. I'm a radiologist, board certified, went to University of Texas. But my pathway to becoming a doctor was not so traditional. In fact, I went to a Caribbean medical school, and most people don't know there's not enough medical school spots in the United States for qualified students. And it's quite a shame, actually, because there's so many people that need health care, so many qualified students, but only about 22,000 medical school spots in the country. We need a lot more than 22,000 doctors coming out in the workforce a year. And imagine it takes minimum 6 years before you can produce a physician, meaning if they went to medical school, 7 years, 4 years of medical school and 3 years of residency. With that being said, the American Association of Medical Colleges, they're the ones that oversees the U.S. medical education system with some of the accreditors and makes some opinions. They say that 80% of the students that apply to medical school are qualified, but only 20% get in. In fact, you can speak to program directors and admissions people, and many of them will tell you off the record that at the end, it's like taking the packets of applications, throwing them down the stairs, and just picking amongst whoever's left amongst the qualified students. With that said, since the 1970s, we've been sending our students who the state of Texas and other states and the federal government have paid for our undergraduate and subsidized it in our high school education overseas to for-profit companies, particularly in the Caribbean. They're owned by companies such as DeVry, it used to be called, maybe you probably have heard about it. It was an online education company that owned 2 of the largest medical schools in the world. Another private equity group called Carlyle Group owns another large medical school in Grenada that you may have remembered when Reagan had to go in there and save a bunch of students in the 1980s. But these schools have done a great job of producing a large number of doctors, but really not a great job of ensuring that we keep students out of debt for the cost of their education. But they're filling a void that hasn't been filled in the U.S., that still since 1992, since the Balanced Budget Act under Bill Clinton, hasn't really changed the structure of healthcare education. I graduated from Caribbean School, and I'm the founder of the first nonprofit Caribbean medical school. Just to give you a scope of how many doctors in the U.S. are from the Caribbean, roughly 20% of the entire U.S. workforce of physicians are from the Caribbean. 20%. So it's a huge number. About 18 to 20% of the primary care workforce comes directly from the Caribbean, if not larger. Very likely, if you've been to Methodist Hospital or any of the hospital systems in the U.S., you've dealt with an international medical graduate, you just don't know it because at the end, we all train and do our residencies as mandatory here in the U.S. We still don't have enough residency positions because we're unable to keep up with the demands of what's needed in our healthcare workforce, with the baby boomers, with retirements, with COVID, with more pandemics to come, chronic diseases such as heart disease and various things. So today, I wanted to be cognizant of the audience that I'm speaking towards and talk about healthcare disparities and with the upcoming election, and not to be partisan, but to talk about things that go across bipartisan lines and things that we're doing in Texas that are really good, and not really focusing on bad things, but focusing on the things that we're doing to bridge these disparities, because at the end, regardless of where you go to school, if you end up practicing in Texas or in other areas of the United States, you will come across healthcare disparities. They don't fall always across gender, race, religion, or economics, but they can fall across all the various things. We're going to talk briefly about maternal death and child death and how that's affected across different communities. We'll talk about access to healthcare and some things that we've done, some things that we haven't, and where we should go. Because I didn't want to sit here and talk about the medical school so much. We'll talk briefly about some of the initiatives that we're doing as a nonprofit to help bridge that gap, because medical education in the U.S., although we've done a really good job bringing more diversity in, it hasn't come at the scope of bringing more Hispanics or African Americans or females. There's more females in the healthcare workforce than there were a long time ago. In fact, it's actually predominantly females in medical school now than males, which is changing. But we haven't yet addressed the fact that most of the medical students admitted into medical school come from wealthy families. So that doesn't address the income inequalities and really the diversity that's needed to be able to help the patients that we have, some of which are the most vulnerable. And even if you're not interested in healthcare per se, if you're interested in economy, the downward effects of that occurring throughout the economic system. I was the fellow for the American College of Radiology when Obamacare was being unrolled, and in economics and healthcare policy. So I have a strong background in that. And to give you an idea, well, you said, what do radiologists know about healthcare economics? 20 to 25% of Medicare and Medicare expenditures go to radiology. The very first thing that happens when you get into the hospital, you get an x-ray, a CT scan, something like that. And that technology is expensive, and the utilization of it's expensive, and the physician workforces are expensive. So I could talk about a range of things, from what's happening in AI now, to education, and then even disease-specific questions at the end if anybody wants to ask me, when I'll open it up for just questions generally about healthcare. But right now I wrote something, not knowing what the audience would be, so I'm kind of going to read off the information that I've spent writing, and then open it up for just discussions of anything in regards to questions about healthcare disparities, education, or specific disease questions. Maybe you have a friend or a family member that has something and you want to ask a question. So I'll go through all those pieces. So thank you all for joining me today, and I want to thank Mr. Wei Li and everybody here at this organization for routinely coming together and sharing thoughts. I've known Wei for now since I was probably a teenager, and he's been an influential person in my life and a role model to look up to, so as many other members who I've met through his community. So thank you very much for bringing us together as people to talk about things for the betterment of society, because I see Mr. Li as a leader, and leaders are people that can change people's emotions or impact people's emotions, thoughts, and actions for the betterment of society, and he's the embodiment of that, and so I really appreciate that. So thank you all for coming together today. I want to address a few topics. I gave you some headway up into it. Healthcare disparities and how we can close that gap in access. I'll start by exploring the specific disparities that impact people across communities, then turn into initiatives and policies that can make a difference. I try to put this speech around the context of the upcoming election that's coming on November 4th. Without being partisan, just talking about healthcare policies. I'll start by looking at what we can do to make a difference in policies as well. But most importantly, I'd like to discuss something that's very important to me, is that how the education system in our country can affect the long-term outcomes of these healthcare disparities. Because a more diverse and culturally competent healthcare workforce begins with our students as well. As we approach this election, I'd like to recognize that healthcare isn't a partisan issue, although it can sound like one many times. Healthcare disparities reach across political lines, both Republican and Democrat, blue and red states. It impacts all communities. A healthier nation is in everyone's interest. At a time to build it's a time to build a healthcare system that works for everyone, regardless of income, background, or zip codes. This is our opportunity to make informed choices that can address these disparities and uplift our communities. We're doing a lot of this in Houston, and I'll talk about the community health centers that we have in Texas and the work that they do to help our communities that we live in. Some economic disparities to talk about. Healthcare disparities often start with economic conditions. In low-income neighborhoods, access to fresh food, safe spaces to exercise, and preventative care is limited, leading to higher rates of chronic conditions like obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure, the three big killers. The data is striking. Families in these areas of poor-income communities experience higher disease rates, not because of lifestyle choices alone, but because of lack of basic resources. Imagine if you don't have a car, and all you have is a McDonald's, and Burger King, and a convenience store next to you. You don't have a way to mobily go and get good food for your family. In this environment, families can't access affordable, nutritious food, creating a cycle for poor healthcare outcomes that not just affect individuals, but affect our entire community. When they end up at a hospital, in the ER, and who's paying for that? Taxes and that long-term care? It's us as a community, if you want to look at economically. There are your neighbors, there are people that work in your businesses and things like that that we have to care for, so we all have a better community that we live in. Texas has begun addressing these economic barriers by investing in community health centers. We have a very unique policy. We haven't expanded our Medicaid after 2012, but we took a different approach, and the approach does work. And we've been empowering these community health centers, such as Hope Clinic as one of them, and many others in Houston, to provide services by increased reimbursements to those physicians that would normally not make much reimbursements for treating that population, as well as providing access to insurance through their networks that they're able to get in front of people and give them the health care that they need through the insurance products. We're providing preventative services in other certain areas, diabetics, Yes.
Have we, I know we've done that on the urban areas, but have we started in the rural areas?
Yes. In fact, I'm going to talk about that as well. The rural areas are very important, and some of the initiatives that we're going to do in Texas, particularly across the United States as well, but after COVID are important as we're utilizing technology to do those things. And one of the reasons for that is that we don't have subspecialists that are able to routinely be in rural areas. And for instance, like a doctor like myself, there's only about 55 of us that graduate a year. It's not enough for the entire country, let alone look at neurology. We have to do stroke intervention through telehealth, so we'll talk a little bit about that. So we began addressing these economic barriers by investing in community health centers and preventative services in underserved areas. These centers provide affordable primary care and outreach programs that help people manage their health as emergencies arise, so they don't always have to end up in the ER. But there's still a lot of work to be done. We have gender and racial disparities in healthcare, which is a serious issue. Maternal mortality among Black women is nearly 3 times higher than that of white women in the United States. That statistics reflects systemic gaps in healthcare access to quality. To address this, Texas has implemented initiatives focusing on bringing maternal health resources to high-risk areas, ensuring that all women receive care that they need during pregnancy. Racial disparities also extend to chronic diseases like hypertension and diabetes, with disproportionately impacting communities of color. It falls along economic lines as well. In medically underserved areas, delayed care means that people are often diagnosed only after the conditions have become advanced. Advanced diabetes with needing dialysis, which costs $40,000 a year to the taxpayers per dialysis patient. Imagine the number of patients we have on dialysis. And we could prevent that by starting them on forget about diet and exercise plans, let's talk about medications at early stages. Some insurance company things that we have to do, make changes are required. Like for instance, this was on Congress and Capitol Hill recently, both a Democratic and a Republican issue. Why can't patients get access to Ozempic and other drugs at early stages? And why does it have to be overpriced? If you can start these patients when they're pre-diabetic, you can prevent the cost of diabetes, heart disease, and stroke drastically. Let's not even talk about these advanced drugs like Ozempic and stuff that they overcharge for 10 times more than other countries. If you just look at metformin, which is a very, very cheap drug, being able to screen and start a patient on metformin at an early stage is one of the life-saving drugs. There's very few drugs that we have that are proven to be life-saving. Metformin, beta blockers, aspirin, a few other drugs, and they're very inexpensive drugs to get, but we have to get in front of the patients early. So racial disparities also go into with the chronic diseases and diabetes. They impact communities of color more and low economic communities as well. I'm sorry if I repeat some of myself here, but this basically outlines how we need more policies that bring healthcare closer to the communities that need it, both rurally, in the rural communities, in the urban communities, in any place that's underserved to improve long-term healthcare outcomes. Addressing this not just in regards to insurance policy, federal policy, and state policy, we have to also address the education system, which often gets neglected. As I said earlier, 80% of the medical school graduates that come into medical school are from affluent families. Just because you're of a certain race, religion, or sex doesn't mean you're going to automatically be able to work directly and understand the problems that your lower income patient has. And so we really need to do a better job at having a more diverse economic background into our medical schools and our nursing schools. The barrier to entry into some of these medical schools is very high, beyond just academically, financially. If you don't start talking to the communities at an early stage in Houston, at the high schools where the medical schools and nursing schools aren't going to, those students won't ever know that they have the opportunity to become a physician or a nurse or a medical assistant. They don't find out until later when it could be too late or for-profit companies coming after them to tap out their federal student loan dollars. We have to start acting at an early stage and making sure that people know that they have these opportunities. Because in Houston alone, for instance, University of Houston has initiatives that they're doing this, and other University of Texas and things like that, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And we've added more medical schools, but if you look at University of Houston, it's like 45 students. That's not enough a year to be producing. It's great that we're doing that, but it's not enough. That's where a school like ours that we founded has many students from many backgrounds, giving all of them scholarships, some of them full scholarships, to be able to finish school. They do 2 years in the Caribbean, and then they come and they finish their last 2 years at Yale New Haven Health Systems in the clinical setting, and then they can come back to the States and practice that they're from. The ideal situation would be that no student needs to go overseas to get their education, but that's a long way away. But these policies that we can do now, such as the community health centers and telehealth, which I'm going to talk about, can make big differences at an early stage. It's important to note that a more diverse and culture-aware healthcare workforce is essential for closing these gaps. Also, research consistently shows that when patients receive care from providers who understand their culture and social backgrounds, their outcomes improve. But building a healthcare workforce that reflects our society starts at the beginning stages in even elementary school. University of Texas did something that was very good in my life. They came at an early stage when I was in middle school and high school. They had a summer internship program. They picked students from throughout the high school systems in Houston before you go into college, and they allowed us to experience what it was like to be a doctor. And we had people like Dr. Red Duke and people like that that would take us around that you would see on TV all the time. It really took people from all the different areas and empowered us to move forward. And I think that most of us actually ended up becoming a physician that went through that program. Texas institutions are leading the way of promoting diversity, despite what you may hear in the newspapers and on the press releases. You can just go to Texas A&M, University of Texas, University of Houston, TCU, any of these schools, and see how diverse our student bodies are. Many state universities have developed outreach programs to recruit students from underrepresented backgrounds into fields like medicine and nursing. Particularly nursing is an area where we have a massive shortage. We have a shortage of 1 million nurses right now in the United States. That's a huge number. The nurses are the front line who takes care of us whenever we're sick. If you ask me to put in an IV, then IV teams can come do it, not the doctor. You ask me to write what the patient needs, I'll write the prescription, but the nurse knows how to give it. They know how to identify that patient when they're sick first to let us know. They know when the EKG is going off to notify the doctor. They're a critical piece of the education and healthcare system. Okay. So, I'll talk about a few other things here. I'll just skip over some policy changes that we could do, or the current policy things that we're doing. In addition to expanding community health programs, building diversity in the healthcare workforce. If you hear me say that one more time, I don't think it's enough. And supporting preventative services. Telehealth remains a crucial piece of the puzzle. We are implementing changes in Medicare to provide more telehealth services. The pandemic demonstrated that telehealth can bridge gaps in healthcare access, especially for rural communities. For telehealth to be effective, we need investment in infrastructure. This is a problem that we have. We're working on it, but we don't have enough high-speed internet and fiber optic lines yet still in the United States to provide high-quality telehealth services. So as you can see, healthcare is not just the delivery of healthcare from a physician or a nurse. It's based on multi-pronged approach, both technology, infrastructure, policy, and education, and the list goes on and on. Another important solution is expanding preventative services. When communities have these services, they're better equipped to manage conditions before they become a crisis. I think this is self-explanatory. I won't get too much into it, but Texas does have preventative care outreach programs for low-income communities and has already showed promise in reducing the burden of emergency services and improving lives. Expanding these programs further could help prevent chronic conditions before they develop, addressing disparities in the long term and reducing our costs. Medicare takes up approximately 25% of our federal GDP, so it's not an insignificant cost. Finally, investing in maternal health initiatives, although that sounds like something that's very subspecialized within the healthcare field, makes a big difference. Community-based maternal health programs in high-risk areas are already showing success in Texas, saving lives and reducing disparities in maternal care. These programs are essential in ensuring that mothers, regardless of any background, have access to quality health care throughout pregnancy and have a good launch of their child and their lives moving forward. And I'll just leave you guys with a call to action. The election is Monday. Everybody vote, regardless of who you're voting for. It's important. Tuesday, excuse me. I've early voted. And healthcare doesn't align with disparities just on political ideologies. There are poor people in every party. There's people of every race, religion, and sex of every party. We have to come up with solutions together. They are bipartisan solutions. There are stuff that are not bipartisan, but if we focus on the bipartisan solutions, we can go a heck of a long way. We have the data to support these solutions. We have the opportunity to make the choices that reflect our values as a community. And I ask each one of you to consider the role that you play, whether it's with your neighbor or the larger community as a whole or just your family member. And we all understand now, based on this talk, that what are some of the brief pieces that we need to look at for healthcare disparities. And I'm going to thank you all for joining me and letting me talk and have this venue to speak briefly. And if there's any questions, I'll just open it up to the floor. Okay, no questions. I'm going to leave you then with healthcare advice. All right. Heart disease is the #1 killer in the United States. It needs to be number 10. There's no reason in here, unless you have a congenital heart problem, that we should be dying of heart disease. We have more information at our fingertips than just your traditional total cholesterol and LDL now. So I'm just going to talk about this one piece. There are tests that you can do, that you can ask your doctor, you can get my phone number, I'll tell you. You can start early, your children can start, teenagers, college kids. Heart disease starts at about the age 30. It's a slow killer. It gets there when you're 50s and then 60s. We can identify now, just because if you have normal cholesterol, it doesn't mean that your cholesterol is really normal. There's a lot of normal looking people out there that there's a lot of problems going on inside. So, Peter Attia has a book. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's the guy graduated from Johns Hopkins. He's an oncologist. It's called Outlive. You can listen to it on Spotify or any of the things in the car. There's just a few tests you can do. There's a test called an NMR lipolipid profile. It'll break down all of your different subcategories of cholesterol. And it could tell you if you need to start a statin or some sort of medication early that works for you at an early stage so you do not die of heart disease. It would just have the brain diseases and the cancers to deal with, but we can knock out the #1 killer in the United States. It does not need to be the #1 killer. We've reduced heart mortality by like 50–60% by just treating you acutely. When you come in with a heart attack, getting you in and putting a stent in and starting you on the medications. We can prevent all that by starting a preventative medication by screening you early. Not all doctors are doing it yet. There's different doctors at different levels of training. So there's some basic tests. You can literally just Google like advanced lipid profile tests and push your doctor to do it if you're not on a statin or had your heart worked up before. And it's very simple. And diabetes is one other major thing. Just screen yourself. You just do one test. It's called the hemoglobin A1C. It'll tell you how your blood sugar's been over the past 6 months. And you can make meaningful differences in your blood sugar. And these two things can reduce your risk of cardiac death and stroke by like massively. And it's never too late to start on it. So I'll leave you with that. If anybody wants my phone number, feel free to walk up to me and ask me later. Mr. Lee, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Talk about your school.
Okay, I'll talk about the school. Briefly, okay. So the name of my university that I founded is called American Canadian School of Medicine, ACSOM. It's the only nonprofit medical school internationally in the Caribbean, and that's where a lot of U.S. doctors go to train. We get every student who gets in gets a scholarship, whether it's a full ride or a partial ride, and even if they started school with a smaller scholarship, if they earn honors, they get a full scholarship. So we give everybody the opportunity to go to school for free, and then we have student loans for them at a low cost to be able to get them through school. They only do less than 2 years in the Caribbean, and the last 2 years is done at Yale New Haven Health Systems, Bridgeport Hospital. They get all their certificates to practice in the U.S. like I did, and it has opportunities for students far and wide. This is it's for both Americans and Canadians. Although our healthcare system is separate, we have similar education systems.
We're about to be Caribbean.
No. St. George is one of the for-profit schools. That's in Grenada. We're in the Commonwealth of Dominica. It's a 3-hour plane ride from Miami. It's a beautiful country. I welcome anybody to come visit. And next time the ambassador comes here to Houston, I'll have him come speak. And it's been training doctors. It's trained over 40,000 U.S. doctors in that island to practice myself. I took over the school that I went to, the campus. So it kind of has been full circle for me. But no, but the Commonwealth of Dominica. It's a British Commonwealth, and it's about 75,000 people. It's known as the Nature Island, and it has waterfalls everywhere. It looks like Hawaii in Hawaii, and it's a great place for vacation, yes, but it's also a good place to get your education. It's for anybody. International. All of our students are U.S. and Canadian, except for maybe 10% of our class. They're from other places of the world. But we encourage people from anywhere that wants to have access to education and come practice in the U.S. and Canada. It's a pathway. It's almost impossible for someone not from the U.S. and Canada to get into a U.S. medical school or Canadian medical school. So if you're from another country, you're also welcome to apply, and we have pathways for them, and we get their visas, and we help them get their residency, meaning their medical residency and their postgraduate training. But I would say 90% of the school is U.S. and Canadian citizens, with 10% being from the rest of the world, but we welcome everybody as long as they're qualified.
What is the cost of living?
An apartment is $450 to $700 a month, so it's very reasonable. The total cost of attendance for our medical school without scholarships is about $217,000 for the whole 4 years. That's lower than a U.S. state school. A U.S. private medical school is about $450,000. The remainder of the Caribbean schools, which a lot of students go to, are closer to $500,000. If you have any kids in school, encourage them to stay away from student loan debt as much as possible. Interest rates with the federal government are 8% right now. When I was in school, they were 2.5%. So if I graduated with $450,000 of student loan debt at the salary that I make, it was reasonable. I could repay it after I finished residency. You have to wait until you finish and start earning some money from your postgraduate training. So it takes about 10 years before you make your first payment. That $450,000 turned into $750,000. It's a lot. But imagine the student that takes debt at that amount at 8%, and they wait 10 years to pay it back. Their student loans are going to be $2 million to pay back almost, when the average physician's salary is $13,500 a month, but their student loan payment will be $15,000 a month. So on another day, I'd be happy to talk about student loans across the board, from our undergraduate loans to graduate loans. The state of Texas does do a really good job of supporting our state-sponsored students. For instance, my niece, she's going to, I think they changed the name of the school a couple of times now, but Texas State, I think is the name of the school now. The one, between her Pell Grants and her various grants, her cost of tuition is 0. The only thing she has to pay for is housing, and she takes loans out, and it's pretty reasonable to live there. Yes? No. They spend 20 months in Dominica. It's a stepping stone. And then the last 2 years they spend in Connecticut at Yale New Haven Health System's Bridgeport Hospital, which that's our flagship hospital. Our dean is faculty at Yale at the hospital service, and our curriculum is designed after Penn State, Yale, and Vanderbilt's curriculum. So our students get the same curriculum as a U.S. student. The other Caribbean schools, they teach around PowerPoints, and that's quite boring. And our school teaches with a doctor and clinical-based medicine. Thank you very much.
You need your business card.
Yes. I have a digital card, I'll give it out. You with the St. George's?
Thank you so much. Dr. Powell, proud of your son. Okay? This is another sample of the immigrant come to this country success story. Yeah.
Thank you so much for staying till the end. We really appreciate your support, your patience. As a matter of fact, Doctor, I wish you had talked a lot more about your schools. I had an opportunity to talk to your representative, and your concept is so interesting. I wish you talked more about it. It's like a second chance. You know, a lot of students, they didn't make it directly to the medical, but this is the place that they have a second chance. It's just like going to community college. You know, I want to share with you an interesting fact. When I was in college, I failed political science 2 times. I make an F in political science class, and we had a school reunion about 3 years ago. They said, Danny, you were the only person who became a politician, and we make an A in politics. So I think your school is very, very good concept. I hope you will contact them to learn more about the program.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. We see you 6:30 at the ballroom for the gala. Thank you so much to come back. Thank you.